Very exciting day today. Thank you so much, Mr. Lyons, for joining me for this meeting. I know we've been planning it for a while now.
It's great to be here, man. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
no, no, truly, thank you so much. How long has it been now that we've been trying to set it up? I think 2, 3 months,
Probably, yeah. We probably first started talking in May or June, and now
May or
it's,
June.
yeah.
That's crazy. Well, great stuff coming today. A few
Good things
notes.
come to those who wait.
That's right. That's exactly right. Um, Speaking of good things, you are now the founder of a user-generated content app. So it's not exactly social media, right? It's reframing this idea of what it means to be social, specifically online, designed to be a social app that gets you off the app.
Right. Which is very strange. Basically, the best way to describe ooPoll for what it is and how we're entering the market is that it's a contest app or network, a place for you to go to find cool contests that are being hosted by brands who care about your opinions and want to reward you for everything you do on the app. Um, and it's great for brands because normally, if you're a brand and you want to hold some kind of a contest, you create that contest and you just put it on your social media. And then so only people who are going to see it are people on your social media, or if you buy advertising and boost that, other people who would find it in their algorithm. So ooPoll is kind of creating the world's first hub for contests. So now every brand will have contests up there. So if you're brand A and you drive people to go play your contest, well, then you're also going to get the views and audiences of brand B who drove people to the platform, right? So so we're entering the market as a contest app, um, but the reality is our hope is that over time it will become an actual full blown social media app because it has all kinds of social media features. So an individual can also just create a contest. So not only can you go on there and find contests from favorite brands who are offering you prizes and discounts for your opinion or for your creativity, but also you could come on and you could create a contest for your family because you're going to a family reunion and you just want to be like, hey, pictures from the family reunion, and you put them all into pictures of the family reunion ooPoll, and as viewers watch, they can watch all those videos and favorite their one favorite, and they get points every time they favorite something. And then the person who submitted something also, and you favored it, gets points, and all those points can be cashed in our store for discounts from our sponsors. So it truly could grow to be a platform business model for media, meaning that if a brand wants your attention or they want your creativity or they want your opinions, they're going to have to provide you something in return. And that's currently not what happens in social media.
So you mentioned creativity and the rewarding of creativity. Where exactly is the creativity focus?
Great. So that's a great question. So imagine you wake up in the morning and you create an ooPoll called inspiring, right? So you put up that ooPoll, you put up a photo or a video that you find inspiring, and then you set that ooPoll up to be open for a certain period of time. Now, anybody else can come see the word inspiring and post a photo or video of their interpretation of what they find inspiring. So that's kind of your creativity or your perception, but you could also imagine another ooPoll could be something like, you know, funny cat games or whatever. So you have a cat that you play a funny game with. That's kind of your creativity. You record that, you post that, other people put up theirs, and everybody is going to get some kind of points for doing that, and those points can be cashed in the store for discounts. So that's how it kind of rewards people's creativity. And a commercial use case for that would be, imagine you're lens crafters and you want to run a big contest of people just trying on glasses, like lens crafters POV. You would put a sign in all of your LensCrafters store with a QR code that people can submit them trying on glasses. And the person who gets voted on the most will get a free pair of glasses across the country, right? So now people are in the store, they're trying on glasses, they're taking these photos and videos, posting it in hopes of winning that free pair of glasses.
It definitely connects the buyer, the consumer, with the brand much more directly. There's a direct link correlation between them. I love that. Something I also realized in our prior discussions in preparing for today's talk was the child friendliness of the app, where yes, we're all competitive by nature, and yet this ooPoll isn't tainted by the toxicity that normally comes to mind when you think of your typical social media.
Yes. And that's a really good point. So as I described, if you made that ooPoll of fun cat games, right? And you post the first video, I post another video, fun cat game, Carol somewhere posts one. Well, then when Johnny comes on the app and he clicks in to watch that ooPoll, he is going to see whichever of you, me, and Carol's videos have been seen the least first. And then he'll see the next one and the next one. And when he watches those videos and he's trying to decide what his favorite is, he doesn't see how many favorites each video has at that point. So he's not just agreeing with everybody else. If Carol had 8 million followers on Instagram and you and I only had 3, she doesn't have an advantage in this, right? The person who's just watching is just like, which one of these cats doing cat games do I think is the funnest cat game? That's the one I'll favorite. So nobody gets an advantage. So what's nice about that is I think a lot of people, unfortunately, who engage with social media have this dream of becoming a big influencer, Charlie D'Amelio or something. So they have to spend a lot of their life creating content, posting constantly so they can build up their following and get caught up by the algorithm and stuff so that they can hopefully one day make some money as an influencer. And unfortunately, a lot of people just don't achieve that goal. And so the idea of ooPoll is, hey, you don't have to dedicate your life to building up a huge following. You can just come on ooPoll, and if you creatively submit stuff to a lot of ooPolls and people like it, well, then you'll get those points and you'll get rewards and you'll benefit, and you won't have had to like spend a lot of time building up your brand. You're just being judged essentially for the quality of your content. And that is not how social media works now.
Yeah, it's creativity first rather than brand image. Because you're right, all these influencers, quote unquote, are just that. They're influencers. They got there because of all these hours and all these brand deals. And don't get me wrong, that's great. And there are some of those who become the next, D'Amelios. And yet, I believe all of us should have some say within the creative economy. I think, and we're going to get into this later in our discussion, but the idea of economies as a whole fascinates me because we have the consumer economy, which is what the majority of our friends or those, in the day-to-day world are a part of, where they just scroll, right? They're consuming. Then there's a next level up, which is the creative economy. And that's the economy I'm fascinated with. That's what, you and I are engaging in. We're putting a product out there, or we're writing, we're adding something that wasn't there previously. What's beautiful about ooPoll, it seems, it balances both economies while giving priority to the creative one.
Exactly. And really giving more of a priority to the users. Like I don't even like to think of the creative user and the viewer user. I just like to think of the user in general.
Okay.
Because as you pointed out, the majority of people on social media are quote unquote lurkers or just viewers. And unfortunately, in today's system, they get nothing but fleeting entertainment, and which is valuable and they enjoy it. That's great. But they don't get anything else. The platform is getting a lot. Many of the advertisers are getting a lot, although a lot of advertisers are not getting what they hope also. And then a few creators are getting something. And it's just like, why can't we all win? Like there's got
Hmm.
to be a way. And that's what I feel like we've really worked and figured out is a system where everybody can win something. And so we talk about how we've gotten rid of doom scrolling on ooPoll because you're never going to leave ooPoll and feel like you didn't get something from it or you don't have a chance to get something, right? Because you're always racking up points one way or the other. So you're always going to get off and be like, I didn't just lose an hour of my life. I submitted to some things and I earned some points and I might even get more points later. And so it's just like I've done something that I might get some benefit from.
Fascinating, fascinating. Speaking of the economies we mentioned earlier, one of our biggest talking points in leading up to this was the attention economy. And you have some fascinating insights into it. Could you give us a small introduction into what it is exactly and how it operates? Because again, maybe not all of us are accustomed either to that terminology or even the idea.
Right. So I like to think of the attention economy from two different perspectives. The first perspective is that each of us has a finite amount of attention that we can devote to something. So imagine you were a person who was up 24 hours a day and you were good at handling three different screens at once, right? Therefore, your attention, your digital attention, is spread 24 times 3, what's that, 72 hours of attention. But that's a finite amount of attention, right? And lots of different people are fighting for that attention. Live events are fighting for that attention. When you're in the movie theater, the movie hopes that you're not also on your phone and they're getting 2 hours of your attention right there, right? So the attention, and then you can also think of social media, TV, radio. There's a million things that are fighting for that attention, which is extremely valuable because it's finite and, everybody has it. So, what many companies try to do now is they build their products so that you become addicted and they can really control your attention. So that's why most social media platforms develop algorithms and spend lots of time on the UI and UX to hook you because they want, as soon as you come on their platform and you're on there for half a second, they're thinking, okay, we've got their attention for half a second. Let's figure out a way that we can hold it for 2 or 3 hours, right? And that's what they are all about. So that's kind of the attention economy at large, is just this idea that there are tons of businesses trying to grab your attention and there's a finite amount. Now, the end result, or the second perspective of that, is that in the attention economy, as I referred to earlier, there's 302 social media users in the US, 302 million. Less than 1% of those make any money, make full-time money off of this, right? Less than 1% are those super successful influencers that are getting paid because they can grab people's attention. 14 or 15% of the people are dreaming and hoping, like I mentioned earlier, that they could become Charlie D'Amelio. So they're making like part-time money and hoping that they're going to get to that big part. The other 84% of the people whose attention is making money for the platform, and is the goal of what advertisers are going after, they aren't getting anything from this whole situation. And so that's what we're attempting to do, is to give everybody who is putting their attention into something that they get rewarded. And then going back to the first perspective, we do not want to build ooPoll to become addictive and to where people are on it constantly. Instead, we want people to go to ooPoll to see cool contests from brands who respect your time and attention and are going to give you a reward. You're going to post to that, and then you're going to get off the app and come back later to see how your submissions did, right? So we're not about trying, we believe that there's ways to make money without having to, dominate someone's attention. And beyond that, we really want to find brands and partners who are going to put up ooPolls that encourage people to actually get off their phone for a second and go out into the world,
Yeah, touch
to
grass.
collaborate with their friends or to take pictures. Because you can imagine, an easy, great ooPoll could just be sunsets, or a walk in a park. One of a great partner for us would be like the National Parks, Association, or National Park Service, excuse me, because they could promote contests for people to go out and take a hike, to go out and enjoy the world around them. And that's what we're trying to say is like mobile media is an amazing gift. It has given us the ability to share our voices to the world. It gives everybody kind of a platform. But because the existing companies are so concerned about dominating your attention, they just want to keep you on their platform. And we're like, no, man, what if you go to a media platform to find brands and cool creative prompts that get you to go out and experience the world? And we can make money off of that because brands want to make real connections with people, and people want to follow brands who respect their time, you know?
Yeah, it seems it all revolves around time, right? There's these big players that you've mentioned throughout the live TV, the social media, these TikToks, the YouTubes, the Instagrams, all these brands, right? So they're all competing for the same thing. That is your attention. And they're buying it at different prices, whether through advertising or the doom scrolling that we mentioned earlier. And so there's this new wave of, I mentioned it earlier, the idea of touching grass. Like, let's get back to what really matters. And that's what ooPoll's doing. That's where they're recentering it, taking a tool, because that's all what this really is. The internet's a tool, social media is a tool, but the same hammer that can be used to build up an amazing creation can also be used to break a window, right? And so it's taking that hammer and using it for its better purpose. And so I totally love how it's reframing the attention economy. Instead of purchasing it, the attention itself for the sense of loss, right? Like, this is no longer mine. It's almost giving it back to them. Like, yeah, we bought it, but here you go. Here it is again. There's still worth and value within your attention because when you leave the platform, you said you're still rewarded. Absolutely love that. Could you talk a bit about how ooPoll differs in base on engagement feed? Because I know the modern social medias, they do something called engagement based feeds, right? And instead of chronological based feeds, what's all that about?
Yeah. So currently, the way social media companies make money is they use what's called an engagement based feed, which is they're going to feed you things that have been engaged with a lot by other people, right? If they're trying to grab your attention and they've got data that video A is watched by millions of people all the way through, and video B is watched by hundreds of thousands of people all the way through, well, they're going to feed you A because there's a better chance statistically that they're going to hold your attention, which is what they're trying to do, right? And then, in addition to that, what they do is not only do they feed you stuff that has a higher percentage of being watched all the way through, but they're looking at what you watched in the past in your behaviors. And many of them are not just looking at your behaviors on their platform, but you give them the permission to look at all of your behavior on their phone. They're taking all that data in, and then they're deciding what Daniel likes to watch, right? Based on his past and based on what he's doing now. They're like, Daniel likes cat videos. So now we're going to go find cat videos and then find the ones that are engaged with the most and feed that to him. And they're just going to feed you more and more cat videos and not necessarily feed you other stuff that they don't have evidence that you like. Now, this is very appealing to a viewer because it's like, oh, I'm getting fed stuff that I like. But the negative side of that is that they're not discovering the world. And the
Mm,
promise of media was A, to give people a voice, and B, to expand people's visions of the world. And this current social media, the reason they want you just to keep watching cat videos and keep watching cat videos is because if they've identified that you love cat videos, now they can go to a cat food company and charge that cat food company more money to advertise to Daniel, who they have conditioned to like cats as much as possible, than they would Francis, who maybe they haven't conditioned to watch cats, right? So everything about their business model is grab the person, hold their attention, craft that person in a way, kind of conditioning. And I hate to say the word brainwash because that's a little hyperbolic, but they are basically over time kind of dictating what you like in a
Mm.
weird way,
This
right?
incredible film documentary on Netflix. You're probably aware of it. Is it The Social Dilemma?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Scary stuff. It really is scary stuff.
Yeah. And so, I've taught two classes, college classes, about the theory and the business model and everything behind ooPoll. And what's fascinating is when you talk to intelligent 18 to 22-year-olds, they're pretty much aware of what's going on. They're pretty much cognizant of the fact that they'd like not to be on social media as much, and they often quit for a while, but then they come back because it's what their friends are. And unfortunately, what I kind of found was ultimately many of them have this cynical type view of like, listen, I know it's bad and I know it could be better, but there are no other options. So I'm just going to embrace this, right? And our whole goal is A, to provide an option that's different, and then B, inspire other people to understand that, like, oh, you can change this model. Often people ask me, like, where do I hope ooPoll is in 5 or 10 years? And I hope the company is still around and doing well and employing lots of people because I love everybody who's on our team. And I hope that I'm always going to try to hire people that we love and care about. But at the same time, what I really hope in 5 to 10 years is that there's dozens of more companies who have embraced this kind of a business model, who have embraced and figured out other business models that don't rely on the engagement based feeds and the behavioral ad targeting. And that's really the dream, is to kind of like show everybody, because I heard that so often in the class of like, well, there just are no other options. So what can we do? And if we at ooPoll could inspire tens and thousands and hundreds of other people and founders to come up with new things, then that's a win.
If engagement-based feeds are one option and they're the evil one, what is the other one? Is there
Right.
anything else we could turn
So
to?
there's something called a chronological based feed, which is where you're going to be fed the latest thing that has been kind of posted, right? And what ooPoll did was we thought about a chronological based feed, but the problem with the chronological based feed um, is that it can just be a little clunky. And so what we've come up with is an equal engagement feed. So what this is if you come on the app and you click into an ooPoll, we quickly look at all the videos that have been submitted to that ooPoll, figure out which ones have not been engaged with as much as the others, no matter when they came in, chronologically or not. And then those are the ones we feed, so that everything gets an equal chance to be favorited by a person.
And that
So we have what we call an equal engagement feed, which is not really something that many other people have kind of done. Like, that's the innovation of ooPoll. So there's, engagement based feeds, there's chronological based feeds, and then there's other types of feeds as well. It's all basically how you write the algorithm. And then there's what we have, the equal engagement.
so okay, equal engagement. This is this new idea, and ooPoll's basically the fire starter. on where you want to see not only the real economy, but of course this humanity as a whole per se in 5 or 10 years, right? What is the bigger social contagion at play here? Because it tends to be that we reflect whatever that is in our personal lives on our phones. What would you diagnose per se is going on outside of that?
The larger contagion. I mean, to me, I think the largest contagion it's kind of this helplessness and ambiguity about what's really going on. And what I mean by that is if you went on TikTok right now or Facebook and spent the next 30 minutes, you would have no idea how they're making money, who your data is going to, anything like that, right? Uncertainty. You also wouldn't know what is real necessarily, and that's another element I haven't brought up yet. But another company I founded prior to this is called Truepic, and it's the world's leader in photo and video verification technology. So what we do there at Truepic is when you take a photo or video, it immediately goes up to the cloud. We make sure that it's not a picture of a picture. We make sure that it's not just trusting your phone's metadata. Because people can jailbreak that phone and claim that it's in one location instead of another location. So Truepic makes sure that all of the metadata that deals with a photo or video is real. It then stores that original file in the cloud, and it puts a digital ledger on that file that will travel with that file forever. And then anytime that file is changed by AI or other software, you can see the percentage with which that file was changed. And so that's another thing that if we can start to teach people that technology exists and start to teach people that, like, oh, if you ever see a photo or video that's not authenticated, that doesn't have this kind of like digital ledger that says who originally created and how much it's changed, well, then you need to really kind of worry about the truth of that video or photo. Because why would a person put something up online and not authenticate that they created it unless they're kind of up to bad news, right? Up to no good. So that's another element of ooPoll that is going to solve this uncertainty. You're going to kind of know where stuff came from. You're going to know very clearly who's getting information from you and who's not. And when you're making choices to watch things and you know that there's not an equal, that there's not an engagement based feed, you're going to know that someone is not conditioning you to believe something, right? Like, because if a person really, really thinks about it and thinks about their values and what they believe, they kind of have to sit back and say, how much of my values and my beliefs are based on what I see on social media? Because if a large percentage of your beliefs are based on what you see on social media, and then you recognize that what you see on social media is being fed to you by a company whose main concern is making money off of you, and you really get into that thing, you're kind of like, what do I really believe? You know what I mean? And there is that kind of like uncertainty. So those are the things that I think is ultimately the contagion, is just this uncertainty of where your information is going, what people know about you, what is real, what's not real. And to some extent, and again, it sounds a little hyperbolic, but just like, what do you really believe? You know, do I like cat videos because I truly like them, or do I like them because they're all I ever see when I go on Instagram?
These are great questions, phenomenal points. It seems like authenticity is what we're lacking, right? This
Yeah.
sense of virility, what is true, 100% all the time. And you mentioned AI. That's changing the game, right? The fact that you can now generate an image and make it look exactly like the real thing can either be scary or if used properly, as we mentioned with the tools, it can, yield this new era of technological advancement and incredible, wonderful breakthroughs. But the lack of knowing what is true, not only in the social space, but in the political space or in the personal space, can either make or break you. So I love this idea that that's what
Well, and
ooPoll
you
is going
bring
for.
up a good, like, so the way news would be done on ooPoll is very fascinating. So you might come on and there might be an ooPoll for, the Q3 jobs report, right? And you would see up there maybe 30 seconds from Fox talking about the Q3 jobs report, 30 seconds from CNN, 30 seconds from BBC, 30 seconds from Truth Social, whatever, right? And so now if you want to earn points, you get 5 points for every video you watch before you choose your favorite, right? So you could come on there, and if you always want to like Truth Social's news or you always want to like MSNBC's, you can do that, but you're not going to get many points unless you watch the other ones too. And that is getting rid of echo chambers, which I think is just so important in letting people understand what's really real or not. Because the reality is, if you had 10 different news networks doing their report on the Q3 jobs report, there's probably three distinctly different interpretations of that job report. Like, you'd look at one and then you'd look at another one and you'd be like, are they referring to the same report? And those of us who understand how media works and understand that all those platforms are interpreting things in a way that their audience and their advertisers are going to like. Not everybody understands that, but just letting more people see, like, oh, so there are other news organizations that see it differently than the way mine is. Just turning that on in people's heads will make them start to think, like, maybe I should never listen to any media company and just take what they say at face value, but I need to take what they say. I need to watch some other things, and I need to think in my own brain and say, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle.
The truth. It's this idea that can mean everything, or if diluted, can mean nothing, right? And in this world where what's your truth, the idea of a personal truth, um, conflicting with the actual truth, and where do we lie? Where do we stand with that? You mentioned the media. I'm not sure if you're aware of that one clip that the exact same words were used over, I think, 10 or yeah, 10 or 15 national broadcasters. The exact same words. And they weren't communicating or whatever, but it's a scary clip. I highly encourage anyone listening to go and watch it. But it was the exact same thing said over 15 broadcast channels. It makes you, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything, but maybe they want us to think something. They want us to perceive truth in a certain way. And so without these filters that you're implementing, it makes it much more difficult to get to our own decisions and think them through ourselves.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, and what's interesting about media and just communication in general is that, right after the printing press was made, you had a small percentage of people in the world who could read, an even smaller percentage of people in the world who could write. So lots of writers would write something, and then there's not that many publishing houses. So the publishing houses would decide what to print based on, of the 10 or 15 people who had written about a subject, they would find out from all of those experts what's the one thing that they wrote that kind of most of them agree with, right? That has expert approval. And that's what would get printed to the world, and that would become true. Now, that wasn't great because it's still only the people who could read and write who are writing that stuff. And those people are generally the more wealthy, affluent
Right,
type
right.
people who have the ability, right? So it's been great in that media for so long has been breaking down the walls to be able to write things and publish it to the world. So now we're in a situation where there isn't a funnel at the top, publishing companies that restrict what goes out there. Instead, everything is going out into the world, right? There is no filter. There's no expert approvals and editors who are specialized in something that decides this is good. Everything goes out there. Now, everything goes out there. The things that kind of become truth are the things that get spread the most. And going back to our earlier engagement-based feed argument, the things that get spread the most are the loudest, craziest, most insane things. So I could put out a post that very articulately solves some huge world problem, but if I'm saying it in a boring type way that isn't very exciting and I'm just describing, I don't know, some medical solution to something, that is not going to get spread around as much as some influencer who kicks his dog or figures out some way to do some funny editing thing where he kicks his dog and his dog flies over a swimming pool or whatever. You know, that's going to get spread around more than than me saying something that's an actual truth, right? Or forget the dog thing, which is kind of a strange, probably morbid example. But say I had written something and it was kind of boring solution to a problem, but then there was some other influencer that was loud and boisterous and said insulting type things and stuff. So that would get picked up in feeds, right? Because people would be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I saw this," and they'd send it around, and that gets sent around, and that person's thing would be kind of become more of the truth because it gets spread around more.
Yeah, and that reminds me of something. One of the best marketing sales professionals out there right now, I believe his name is Daniel Pinkard or Daniel Pink. And he talks about this idea that value these days is no longer in the amount of information you can provide, because truly information is unlimited and it's a click of a button away. One Google search and you have what you need, right? Instead, these days, value comes from content curation rather than content creation itself. Because there's people pumping out content, right? But if it's not curated to the way you like it personally, as a user, we no longer want to watch those videos, although they could be true, right? For example, the people who are die-hard SMBC only watchers enjoy their content because it's curated to the way their heart and mind already think, right? And this can be both valuable and dangerous. Valuable in the sense, I know as a user, I will always enjoy watching this channel, right? But as a consumer in a real world with real problems, that can be dangerous because it's only being curated to one mind, one taste, without any sense for the change. And there's minor versions of this, like we all have our favorite YouTubers. We watch them because they content curate in the way we like it, right? So on the lower levels, maybe it's just enjoyment and how we enjoy spending that leisure time. But on the macro level, it can be a game changer.
Yeah, there's another aspect of ooPoll that I think is interesting, and this is related to kind of what you just said, which is that very few things in our society are kind of determined by quality or merit. It's much more about quantity, right? Like getting back to the equal engagement feeds, the more you post, the more your stuff is probably going to get spread around. If I'm an amazing singer and I record myself singing something a cappella, but I don't have many followers on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, then nobody's going to hear my beautiful voice. Whereas if I wanted more people to hear my beautiful voice, I just need to pump out more and more songs of me singing, right? For it to get found. Now, in some ways, like, listen, that person's hustling, right? They're working. They're working their craft. They're putting it out there, and that's fine and that's great. So I kind of understand that. And you know, ooPoll is not going to be like, oh, a person can literally suddenly become a rock star by just posting one thing every week. But I don't think everybody necessarily wants to be a rock star. They would just like to do something, feel validated for it, feel that other people respect it, and move on with their day, right? And then on ooPoll, they also get some rewards. So that's kind of the people we're going after, is just like, hey, you've got a talent, you've got something clever that you want to say, you've got an opinion, and you want to be respected for that. You want to get something for that. And you don't want to have to dedicate your life to doing that constantly to get anything from it.
Yeah, in this environment where opinions differ, respect seems to have been going down, or at least it's getting harder for the majority of us to just see someone as the beautiful human that they are and say, I love you and respect you inherently because of your humanity rather than because of your political opinions or because of your thoughts on this or that.
But what I like to tell people is that ooPoll is celebrating and rewarding people for sharing the life moments and values that bring us together, not that tear us apart, right? So if we have an ooPoll with a big prize sponsored by Dick's for the best high school run from scrimmage on a Friday night at a football game, or the best high school, a cappella choir, well, then everybody's going to be watching that. And regardless of your political views, your race, or anything, we can all respect sports excellence. We can all respect talented singers, choreography and singing and all of that. So that's kind of what we want to do, is like, so much of social media drives us apart and puts us in holes and puts us to where you're seeing all the stuff as everybody else. And when we're forgetting about the millions of things that we all share and care about, I really do believe that there's more things that we have in common than differ, that we don't have in common. And unfortunately, media is capitalizing off of pushing us apart, because when they push us apart, then they can grab more of your attention. Because if I tell Daniel, like, Daniel, you should never listen to this, you should never listen to these people, they have totally different views from you. Well, now I can grab your attention more by just feeding you the things that I've recognized that you like, right?
You said this earlier in preparing for this conversation, and I wrote it down because I wanted to make sure I quoted it. But you told me there's huge importance in coming together and creating respectful settings around the things we enjoy and have in common. That is how we improve civic discourse and the manner of humanity.
Yep. I totally agree with when I said that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what you said when you said it as well. It's great. Something I have here in my notes, and I wanted to touch on it. I've done prior research with it, with some work with play included and Lego on, the autism spectrum and kids coming together to play, right, and work on their social skills through play, right. The main essence, what highlights that, is the power of play. I love that idea, right? It's something that I think we, as we grow up, we tend to be less playful, but ooPoll seems to motivate and encourage play no matter your age, right? Because you can be in your 30s, 40s, 50s, partaking in an ooPoll, and almost now you're competing, right? But for fun. This is play in a way. What are your thoughts and opinions?
Yeah, no, I mean, the power of play is huge. I mean, think of the innocence of children, right? They're all amazing. They're great. And at that age, all they're doing is exploring, learning, and playing, right? And we all have that in us, that beautiful, innocent child. But as we get older and older, we learn certain things, we get stuck into groups, we develop these like ideals and things that we think we really believe in, and we get really stressed out, and we forget that, like, wait, hold on. When we were 4, everybody was playing, having a good time, learning, exposing themselves to new things constantly, developing skills. And so that's the power of play. The other interesting, I mean, sports is a great example of this. Like, we all come together and watch people play games. And that reason is particularly fair games where there are rules. When there are rules that everybody agrees to, then you try your hardest, you do your best. And at the end of the game, yeah, you might be bummed out that your team lost, or that, the team that you're a fan of lost. You're bummed out for a second. But for the most part, as long as the game was fair, you're going to walk away going, you know what? A bunch of people got together, played a game on a field. Even more people watched it and enjoyed it. And we all are satisfied with the outcome, right? And we don't think of our political situation. Now we've pushed, we doubt our elections, we doubt everything, right? And it's just like, come on, we can get back to, if we establish the rules and we're transparent about the rules, then we can all come together and engage in things that have rules and be satisfied with the outcome. Because there's always another game, right? Any great professional athlete knows the idea of like next pitch or next game or whatever. You don't settle on the past play and your failures or even your successes too long, and you go on to the next thing. And that's something that I think we need to do more in society, and games teach you that. When you're a kid and you're playing Monopoly and you lose, you don't then just get up and go, I'm going to hate the person who beat me forever and find any way to argue with them or whatever. You're just like, let's play again.
Yeah. Some would argue that life itself is almost like a game, and each new day is an opportunity to level up, right? We take it or we don't. And I wanna have this reason to keep my innocence, because it's not that it gives you a rose tinted lens to view life through. It just gives you this overall appreciation for the beauty in life.
Yeah. And I think too, when you are playing and have that innocence, you also have an openness and a desire for exploration. Like I'm afraid too many of us go around in the world and we're not thinking about new stuff we can learn, new perspectives we can understand. I don't think a lot of people walk around in their daily lives going, looking at somebody and being like, man, I really wonder how they see the world or whatever. And like that sense of empathy. And when you're a kid, you kind of, whether you're consciously doing that or not, you're watching everything, you're processing it, you're trying to understand it, right? So I think innocence, there's a part of innocence is just like you're an open book and you're progressive, you don't take yourself too seriously, you're always trying to learn more, right? And so it's innocence and just openness to learn.
There's been a lot of wisdom you've shared, but now keeping with the branding of being curious, right? I'd like to shift our conversation a little bit, here coming to land the plane about your specific life and skill set, right? You've come from Hollywood. You're incredible success in the entrepreneurial world. You mentioned your prior company, Truepic, now ooPoll, right? Throughout this entire journey, what's been on your mind? What's been your fuel? What's been that thing that's been getting you going, or you just can't stop thinking about?
Um, I mean, it all kind of goes back to my childhood and the fact that I think I know I was very fortunate to just have amazing parents. My dad was an educator, a college professor, and just from a very young age, my dad just always respected everything we had to say. Like he would talk to us at 5 as if we were one of his 19-year-old college students, right? So I think I've just always been encouraged to share my ideas and my thoughts. And when you're always encouraged to do that, you have a confidence, right? You have a confidence that you can do anything and that you can discover anything. And so I think what's driven me always has just been to learn more, to see problems, try to figure out those problems. And then if you think you've solved a problem, have the confidence to kind of go for it, and the entertainment business is a tough business where you're just coming up with an idea that you think is great. You start to develop the TV show or the movie or whatever, and then you have to go out there and try to sell it. And you get a lot of no's, tons of no's, way more no's than yeses. And people often kind of push back on you and want you to change your vision. And then you have to decide, how much do I really want to change my vision or not? How's it going to affect it? And so, yeah, I guess I've always been driven to solve problems, to learn more, and then to pay forward what my parents did with me, which is to just listen to everyone else and give everybody equal respect. I've been very fortunate to meet a lot of powerful, very smart people in my life, and I still got to tell you that I don't know any of the world leaders and things that I've met that they necessarily, I would say I'd much rather hang out with that person than just random Uber drivers I've had or waitresses at a diner who I've sat down and talked to. I think everybody is extraordinary in their own way, and we just need to take the time to discover what's extraordinary in every person.
Mm, I love that. I think I'll quote you on the idea of solve problems, keep learning, pay it forward.
Exactly.
I love that. I love that. So that's your recent fuel, your why. And my final question, fascinated by this idea of wisdom, right? For me, I've been asking myself, what are those principles that I've been carrying through me? And you mentioned your early life, your incredible parents. What is something your mama told you, your father told you, or something a mentor said that's kind of stuck with you, and you just come back to it, you keep repeating it.
So this is going to be a little weird because it's got a little bit of a three-letter bad word in it, but it
Okay.
really is my answer to this question. Um, and I've seen this throughout my life numerous times, and I always think about it. And it's really nothing we've talked about yet. And I once had a science teacher in the seventh grade, Mr. Sowers. I remember him. And he said, "Kids, there's one thing I want you to take away from this class. It's that no matter how much of a badass you think you are, there's always going to be somebody in the bar who can kick your blank, right?" And what that means is that you can never take yourself too seriously, right? No matter how much success you've got, and it kind of ties back to discovering other people and respecting them, is like no matter how much success you've had, there's always someone you can learn from, and there's always somebody who's better than you in some way. And if you just remember that, you'll be a lot more successful. And I've seen it. I've seen the times in my life where I've gotten too confident, because in the entertainment industry, this happens a lot. You have some success and you think you're on top of the world. But the reality is, so much of the entertainment industry is like pure luck.
Mm,
There are millions of people who are very great writers, very great producers, film directors, and stuff, probably more talented than many film directors you can name off the tip of your tongue, but those people just weren't in the right situation or predicament, for them to find that success. This is also an important thing to remember, in that industries flip over all the time, meaning that often you're a buyer. People are pitching you, and things will flip. And in a few years, suddenly you could be pitching that person, right? So if you have that attitude that you're really smarter than everyone else, and that person is pitching to you, and you're like, that's a bad idea, this, that, and the other, and they walk away going, that guy's a jerk, well, then you're going to be in trouble in a few years when suddenly they're buying from you, right? So that's kind of like, just never take yourself too seriously. Always recognize how much luck has to do with things, how much the people who are around you have helped you, you know, and I think that's just a great thing. So, despite the kind of bad word, and probably you not expecting that was going to be my answer,
I love it.
that's what I learned from Mr. Sowers. Never take
Mr.
yourself.
Sowers stays alive then. Mr. Lyons, thank you so much for coming in today, for sharing these perspectives, for giving a unique look into the social media world, the attention economy, these engagement-based feeds, and everything we talked about. Where do people need to go if they want to keep up with your work?
Yeah. definitely go to the App Store right now and download ooPoll app, the ooPoll app. We are in early release right now. We're not going to really be launching for real until 2025. But you can go on there. You can play around. We're very excited to get your thoughts, leave comments, etc., and just check it out.
Yeah,
But
getting a sneak peek. Wow, I'm honored.
exactly. Yeah, so that's how you can keep up with us. Follow us on Instagram, etc. But yeah, I really appreciate the time, Daniel. Love what you're doing. I love the initiative to go out there and do this at your age. Um,
Oh, glory to God. Thank you.
that sounds ageist, so I'll say at your level of life experience.
No, I'm honored. Thank you, truly.
um, cool, man. Well, I
Yeah.
really appreciate it, and best of luck.
In that case, till next time, stay curious.
Thanks. Cool.